Hello ladies and gentlemen, once again this is Jeremy Smith, Photog J the Great. Today we're going to be looking at Nikon's new 24 to 85 millimeter VR lens. This one is designed for the FX format. I wasn't terribly excited about this lens. It was announced at the exact same time as the new 18 to 300, which we also took a look at. This one, I could see the 18 to 300 and I saw where it was a nice improvement. This one I was kind of thinking, where are we going with this? But one thing that's become apparent is that it seems that Nikon is working on a new full frame camera that's going to be more of an entry-level type model, or more of a mid-range type model rather. And this seems to be the perfect kit lens for that particular camera. So that's something that actually does get me excited. I use this lens on the D7000 and the D700. On a DX camera, I wouldn't recommend this lens. It's not a particularly good range. It does give you quite a bit of telephoto on a DX camera, but in my opinion, it's just not quite wide enough on DX. So if you have a DX camera, I'd recommend going with something like the 16-85 or something along those lines. On FX, this one is much better. If you do see yourself, if you have a DX camera right now and you see yourself going to FX later on, that'd be the only reason I would buy this lens for an FX camera, for a DX camera, is if you know that you're going to be going to FX later on and you still want something that will work on that as well. This lens is quite a bit smaller than the Pro Level 2.8 lenses, which is also a nice thing. Of course, don't expect it to be the best in low light, but it is quite a bit better than a lot of the other lenses in this range, and it actually is very sharp, and overall I was pretty impressed with it. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a closer look at the lens, and then I'll show you guys some of the samples I took with it. Taking a closer look at the lens, you'll realize that it's pretty compact. If we compare it with this 50mm 1.4G, you can get a much better idea. The 50mm, of course, is a very small lens. So you can see it's pretty compact there. It is a 72mm filter size, which is just a little bit larger than most of the kit lenses. Most kit lenses in this range are usually 67mm. It, however, isn't as large as the Pro Level lenses, which those usually are 77mm. So it's kind of in between. It's also kind of in between in terms of aperture as well. This lens is not a constant aperture 2.8 or f4 lens. However, it is a little bit faster than most kit lenses. Most of the kit lenses in this range start at f4 on the wide end of the lens, and they usually have a maximum aperture of 5.6 on the telephoto end. So this lens right here is a little bit better than that, but it's not Pro Level. It's not a constant aperture. However, it is 3.5 maximum aperture at 24mm, and at 85 it has a maximum aperture of 4.5. So all in all, not bad, but still, of course, not going to be the best choice for low light. But that does allow them to make a lens that's quite a bit less expensive and a bit more compact than some of the larger Pro Level 2.8 and f4 zoom lenses. This lens is also it also has a lot of Nikon's newer technologies. It is an AF-S lens, meaning that it has a silent wave focusing motor built into the lens. So basically, if you have an entry-level body like a D40 or D60, or a 3200 or 5100 or any of those, you will be able to maintain autofocus capabilities if you're using this lens on any of those cameras. A lot of the older lens designs don't have AF-S, and they won't autofocus on those entry-level bodies. Nikon also had an older version of this lens, and it was a 24-85 AF-S as well, but it didn't have VR. So this one is updated in that regard also. It also features ED glass elements. So if you're shooting a lot of, if you take a lot of photos with very bright highlights in the scene. You're not going to get that that purple fringing effect that's often seen on lenses in this range, so that's very good. This lens is also an internally focusing design. So unlike a lot of the kit lenses, like the 55 to 200 and 18 to 55 and lenses like that, you don't have to worry about the lens changing shape as it focuses. So if we take a look at this, okay, of course it does change shape whenever it zooms. It goes out just moderately so. It's still fairly compact even when at full tele. But if I start to focus here, you'll notice that the front barrel is staying fixed. It's not rotating. And the lens is not extending when focusing. So all the focusing is done internally, which is very nice. Let's see, let's take a look at this side of the lens. You'll notice down here you have the focus settings. We've got M-A, and then you've got M. So you've got the first setting. It will autofocus, but you can reach up at any time and actually manual focus. Unlike the kit lenses, a lot of the kit lenses, like say for example the 18 to 55, while it's still technically an AF-S lens, it's not really a true AF-S lens. It has a built-in focusing motor, but it's not the same type of focusing motor that's going to be found in a pro level or mid-range lens like this one. So that's why you'll notice on those lenses they just have an A setting and an M setting. They don't have an M-A setting. So I'll have to make a video on that sometime in the future. But on this one, of course, we can just focus. If you autofocus and it's not quite performing the way you want it to, and you don't want to switch over to full manual, you can just reach up and override the focus mechanism just by turning the ring directly. And then we have down here our VR on and VR off. So just like any other lens, any other VR lens, if you're shooting on a tripod, turn it off, otherwise leave it on. It is important to note that this lens does not have the normal and active setting that some of the higher end lenses have. So that's just something to kind of be, just something to kind of note. Although in actual practice, I don't think it will matter a whole lot for most people. This lens also has Nikon's super integrated coating, which basically is just kind of Nikon's standard coating, if you will, for their lenses. However, missing on this lens is Nikon's nano crystal coating, which is a coating used on higher end lenses that helps to even further reduce the chances of lens flare and things like that. I did take several shots with this lens in a situation where I had a bright light source in the frame, so we'll see how it compares in just a moment. If we take a look at the rear of this lens, like most other Nikon lenses in this range, it does have a small little gasket there to help keep out dust and just light moisture. Of course, it's not waterproof, but if you get caught in a light drizzle or something like that, it makes things a little bit less bothersome. So that's very good there. At first, I wasn't terribly excited about this lens. I thought, oh boy, yet another variable aperture lens, just what I need. But all in all, I'm actually pretty impressed. It kind of reminds me of my old Nikon 18 to 70 lens that I used to use on a DX camera. So it's very, very similar to that, which I consider to be a good thing. So basically, if you're looking for something that's a little bit less expensive than a lot of the pro level constant aperture lenses, which are of course very expensive and very heavy, this can be a very good alternative. The biggest thing about this lens, in my mind, is the fact that it seems to point towards Nikon's rumored D600, which is going to be supposedly a entry-level mid-range type full-frame camera. So if that type of camera comes along, it's very, very likely that this lens will become its kit lens. So that's something that is very exciting to me. Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the samples from this lens. Okay, taking a closer look at these samples here. Some of these were shot on the D7000, and some of these were shot on the D700. Now this one right here was the D7000, and this was shot in JPEG mode. You guys may remember that before I've mentioned to you that if you're shooting in JPEG on any of the Nikon bodies, there's a lot of in-camera processing that goes quite a ways in reducing certain lens anomalies, color fringing and things like that. So that's why I usually try to shoot in RAW whenever possible, and then sometimes I'll kind of toss in a few JPEGs as well to give you an idea there. So anyways, this one is from the D7000 in JPEG. So let's see, we're going to zoom in. And I think what I'm going to start doing from here on out is I'm going to take the same scene, but I'm going to shoot in RAW plus JPEG. And so that way we can compare the JPEG and the RAW. You guys will get a better idea of what's being subtracted by the camera. So anyways, I didn't do that here, but we will do it in the future. Let's see here. I was shooting at f11, 60th of a second. That kind of gives you a good idea of how well the VR is performing. Didn't shoot this on a tripod, but you can tell here it was just starting to rain a bit. Pretty decent detail. This lens, as I said before, it does remind me of my 18-70. Which says a lot. It's which is a good thing, but at the same time, that lens didn't particularly excite me. It just kind of got the job done. I'd have to say that I pretty much feel the same way about this one. And yeah, you'll notice if we look here around a lot. Let's see here. If we look at some of these highlight edges, you'll notice that there's not any type of color fringing or anything like that to be seen. The camera is mostly subtracting that out, as you'll soon see. I'm going to go on now to the next sample. This one's f11, 36 millimeters. This is shot on the D700. Zoom in here. Now, it's a little bit hard to see, but if you look around these edges here, along these highlights, you'll see a little bit of magenta fringing here, a little bit of cyan fringing over on this side. So that's something that is a bit noticeable in this lens. It's not terribly bad though. And as you just saw, if you're shooting in JPEG, it's going to subtract it for you. If you're shooting in RAW, you can you can remove that in software. If you're using Photoshop or Lightroom or anything like that, they have these lens profiles that will subtract that for you. Now, with this being a new lens, that profile is not available yet, but it will be soon. But yeah, you can kind of see here in the RAW file, just there's a little bit of that fringing going on. Still though, pretty sharp. That's interesting. A little bit of a moire effect going on up there. Just not a lens issue, but anyways. All in all, it looks pretty good. This lens didn't look terribly good in the corners though, as you will soon see in one of our upcoming shots. Let's see here, 48 millimeters, f5.6. So here I'm shooting very close to wide open. And still pretty sharp though. It doesn't make me go wow, but it doesn't make me say, man, this lens sucks either. It's just kind of in the middle. Pretty decent. As always, all these photos will be on Flickr. Let's see, here's a shot from the telephoto into the lens, 85 millimeters, f9, 1/160th of a second. And it's a Miata in my favorite color. Yeah, it's raining a bit here again. Still pretty sharp though, I'd say. Let's move on. What else do I have here? Okay, this is kind of neat, I guess. let's see, f4.5. So this one was shot wide open, and this is at 65 millimeters. It's interesting though. There's no color fringing to be seen at all in this one. One would think that shooting this wide open you'd see that more, but in this particular case you don't see it at all. I don't see it anywhere in the frame. I didn't really shoot anything that gives us a good example of bokeh, but here you can kind of see it a little bit. Yeah, the bokeh from this lens hurts my eyes. It's absolutely hideous. But okay, let's see, let's move on. Okay, let's see, 24 millimeters, 4.5. Still pretty sharp though. Not bad at all. Not bad at all. This is the shot where I started to notice a lot of color fringing though. So if we look right here, you'll notice that you don't really see much of anything to speak of. See, actually, if you look very, very carefully, if you really pixel people this one, you can see it a little bit along these along this railing here. But this is pretty much still pretty close to the middle of the frame, and it's not too bad. However, as we progress across the frame and get to the extreme edges of the frame, it gets terrible. So let's see if we go down here, see if we compare it to this side, see how there's almost no fringing to even speak of. But as we keep moving towards the extreme edge here, I mean, look at it now. I mean, now you don't even have to look for it. It's pretty substantial. So yeah, even right here. So anyways, just something to be noteworthy of. If you're an architectural photographer or something, or a landscape photographer, you may notice that a lot. I'm definitely more of a portrait photographer, as you guys have noticed, so that sort of thing doesn't bother me some, but I do like to point it out in the review. This lens did do very well in terms of flare resistance. Despite not having the nanocrystal coating, it still did very well there. We have some, we have a pretty heavily backlit scene here. This is our sun. It's basically just outside the frame up there, and I don't really see any flare to speak of. I was not using the lens hood on any of these shots, but I don't see any flare to speak of. So it actually did pretty good there. Here's another shot like that. Sun's right about up there in the frame. Let's see, f8, 1/2000th of a second. There's a little bit of flare right there. And let's see, I don't see any other flare. Yep, so yeah, just right there. So definitely good in terms of flare resistance. And let's see here. I think that was it actually. Okay, that is it. Well, as always, I will upload all these photos to Flickr. This lens, for the money, is not bad at all. It's definitely a step up from the kit lenses. If you know that if you have a DX camera right now and you know that you're going to go to full frame later on, this would be a very good lens to get. Or if you find yourself using, one thing about lenses that I always tell people is, if you find that you shoot in the 70 to 200 range more often, like if you're shooting, sports or something like that, and you shoot in a telephoto range more often, you can spend a bit more money on a lens in that range. If you find that you shoot, if you shoot a little bit of this range less, and you don't want to buy the most expensive lens, the best lens in that range, just because you don't shoot that range as often, then this would be one of those good kind of step-down lenses, which is not a bad thing. Just kind of keep in mind that if there's a particular range in your focal length that you don't use as often, then that may be an area where you can actually afford to get something that's not necessarily the highest end. So just something to think about on that. Anyways, until next time, this is Jeremy Smith, Photographer Jay the Great, signing off.